Howdy howdy, Kanaji here. Welcome to another exciting episode of Spelunking in Space, backed by popular demand. Well, backed by popular demand. That's right, the only show focused exclusively on the caves of No Man's Sky. You asked for it, and it's here. And this episode may just be the best one yet. We have thrills, we have chills, we have spills, we have kills, we have bills, we have, wills, what else? Quills, maybe, I don't know. We've got a lot of things in this episode, don't worry about it. What you should worry about, though, is that I may have accidentally set my HDR settings incorrectly while recording this. So if things look really washed out and you can't make out any detail in light or dark areas, I apologize. That was a mistake on my end. Also, you may notice some strange pop-in here or there with certain assets in the game. That was not me. That was Hello Games patching it at some point last year, because I didn't used to have those issues, and I'm playing on PS5, so generally I don't have that sort of pop-in at a close distance. So if you see anything that looks a little odd, I apologize in advance. Boop! Kanaji from the future here. So I recorded this ahead of time because I knew I was going to be too busy to make a video this week. But in the off chance that something cool happened in No Man's Sky news, and it's some kind of like cave exploration update, and this seems really, like I didn't get the update, that's why. It's because this was recorded way like a week or two ago before whatever update launched. If no update launched, hey, that's great. Please ignore this section. Alright, bye! Alright, so this week's episode is a continuation of last year's episode, which episode 4 began a trend of exploring uninhabited systems, which are those planetary systems without any civilization whatsoever. No Gek, no Korvax, no Vy'keen. So it's just nature. And I thought these would be great places to look for caves and wildlife and things of that sort. So today I'm in a green uninhabited system. Last year it was red, and next episode, whenever that happens, it will be a blue uninhabited system. So today we're visiting the Ashima Obor system, which, as you may notice, 2 of its planets are named, well, one of them's Ashima and one of them's Obor. So we're going to begin today's journey with planet Ashima. So let's visit the planet Ashima, an irradiated landscape, but beautiful nonetheless. But of course, as beautiful as it is up here, we're really here to see what lies beneath. Lucky for us, what lies beneath is just as beautiful. So here we see a mossy cave, something we're pretty familiar with. However, this is a pink mossy cave, which is not something I believe we're familiar with. In my experience, especially with this series, they've mostly all been green when they're mossy. So this is something pretty cool. And funny enough, that might not be typical for most people, but in my experience, that's been typical. And that's just such a cool thought that, someone else playing the game might only get orange mossy caves. And it just so happens that I mostly get green. So remember, when you might think, oh, the game is just full of this or full of that, or every single one of this type of planet looks like this. It's possible that's just your corner of the galaxy. Of course, if you play enough of the game, you'll probably, get to a different part that has different RNG, but in my experience, it's often dictated by the part of the galaxy you're in. So here's another shot. I just love when the ceiling of the cave looks like a field of stars, and in this case, pink stars. And here's another look at some of that beautiful disc fungus. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this first cave. It's very similar to caves we've seen before, and I think there are more exciting things in store for us in the Ashima Obor system. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Here we are, Planet Obor. It's a beautiful, lush planet. I absolutely love orange grass and blue oceans. But we're not here to explore the surface, of course. As you know, we're here to see what lies beneath. Let's take a look under the surface of Obor. And lucky for us, it's just as beautiful down here. So we're getting a look at the mossy caves of Obor. And you might think, oh, this looks kind of similar to what we just saw. You have some disc fungus. Different variety, mind you. We have some troglodyte tulips on the ceiling, grass on the floor. Nothing too impressive or unique, I know you're thinking. But this cave actually has more to it the longer you explore. As with most geological features of No Man's Sky, to be honest. So I absolutely love this section. The entire floor was sand, but there was this bioluminescent grass just along the edges, so it felt like a raceway as I was going through these caves. It's a weird quirk of the procedural generation that I haven't really seen before, so I thought it was worth documenting. And here's a better look at some of that bioluminescent grass. It's just so cool. So for the first time in this series, we actually have an underwater portion of the cave. And this was something I was really excited to explore because somehow in 4 episodes, we never came across this at any point. I don't know how, but somehow we hadn't. So let's take a dip. Now, luckily I'm not too afraid of drowning in this case because I have an aeration membrane installed or something similar, some kind of oxygen protection. But if you're going spelunking in No Man's Sky and you spot an underwater cave, of course, have fun, but always make sure that your oxygen's topped off. And if you don't have like some kind of oxygen protection, just be aware of your oxygen meter. If you've made it halfway and you haven't found an exit, just head back. Halfway down your meter is what I mean. Because in this case, I follow this tunnel as it snakes back and forth, but it actually leads to a dead end, as you can see here. So I actually had to go all the way back, which not a big deal because again, I have an aeration membrane. But if you don't have an upgrade installed, you actually can't refresh your air without help of like a candle kelp or something similar. Now there's a sight. Now in order to give you a better idea of just how immersive No Man's Sky's underground procedural generation is, I wanted to leave you with a little bit of raw gameplay here, so I'll just let that play out. Pretty cool, huh? For audio listeners, I'm basically just demonstrating how complicated and confusing some of these above and underwater parts of caves can be, and how interconnected these cave networks are. So they can go on for miles under the surface of this planet, and who knows how far underwater they could be. It really adds a whole new, if you'll excuse the pun, it really adds depth to the spelunking experience, and it was something that I was just too excited to share with y'all. So up here we have a look at some albumin pearls. We have a sandy area over there, not filled with water, just sand, and of course the familiar stalactites on the ceiling as well, and a glance at the storm going on outside. It's just beautiful how many layers there are to each of these planets. So, heading back over here, I also included this clip to give you an idea of some of the dangers of exploring caves. So luckily I have toxic protection, but there were a lot of these suckers right here, so if you're exploring, make sure you always have your toxic protection topped off for instances like these. Otherwise you're going to be running for the hills. Now this view is something you don't see every day. So I'm currently swimming, and just the entire ceiling is covered in hanging moss. To the side we have these beautiful glowing disc fungus. It's the kind of view that, even though I'm familiar with No Man's Sky's procedural generation, it still feels like it was very intentional, right? Because of how beautiful it is. And of course down here we have another underwater cavern. And in this case, I actually end up making it all the way back to the beginning of where I started this cave journey on this planet. So let's just get out of there. Take one final look at the caves of Obor. So here we have beautiful bioluminescent plants. You can see the color a little bit better with the daylight shining through. And this area actually has less moss but more light, which is pretty interesting. And it just goes to show, even within a single cave, you're not getting the same even placement of things across the entire network. Some areas are going to be mossier, others rockier, and some are just completely underwater. But alright, as much fun as it was to explore Obor, we have more sights to see on our tour of the Ashima Obor system. So, stop number 3 is the desolate, dusty planet of Nisa 37. Now this is what you would call an airless world. No plant life above ground, right? All rocks. But underneath, actually it's not much better. We see some light grass, but most of the caves I found on this planet are what you're seeing now. Dark, empty, single chamber caverns. At least, that's what it seemed like. So I kept looking, trying to find more and more, but as you may notice, most of these caves are pretty dark. I'll explain that in a minute. Here we do have a little bit of moss, a little bit of light, but still nothing compared to what we would expect to see in a cave. But in my headcanon, it's because this is an airless planet, right? So there isn't much atmosphere. Plants can't really thrive here, so the caves are mostly dark, mostly dead. However, this cave here does have some moss and bioluminescence. Now this next cave, as you can see, there are little plants that should have chocolate tulips glowing. Based on most mossy caves we've seen, you have tons of lights on the ceiling. But these I've never seen before. They're all empty. No glowing flowers. Maybe they haven't budded yet, but again, I like to believe it's because it's an airless planet. But it gives the cave a real eerie feel without that bioluminescence. Luckily I have a flashlight though. So while looking for caves across the surface, I came across this gigantic figure 8 shaped crater, which, if you pay attention closely, there are a few openings in it. So I decided to explore those, thinking, maybe they're connected. And luckily for me, this is where I found my first large cavern of the planet. Now, unfortunately, while it does have a little bit more bioluminescence, some more stalactites and stuff, not really much to see here. Pretty empty cavern. Again, result of probably being an airless world. Not much development here. But I still didn't give up. I could have given up. As you've seen, I've visited a lot of caverns on this planet, but I figured it still had more to offer. So as I kept hopping around, I finally landed in the cavern I'd been looking for. Using the word landed very liberally there. And here we are. Might not look like much, but for this planet it's pretty impressive. And here we see another example of those dead or unblooming chocolate tulips. Just a very dark chamber in here. Very spooky. Half expect some kind of spider creature to jump out. Which, hey, Hello Games, add spider creatures that crawl on the ceilings of caves. That would be cool. Now through here, I always love when you have these openings to the sky way above you, because it reminds you that you're under the ground, right? You're not just a meter below the surface, you're deep down. And here, I love this chamber, because the sand at the bottom reminds me of a river. It makes me think, maybe at some point in this planet's history, there was water here, right? And maybe it pooled here before it finally evaporated. And it's just, I know it's all in my head, right? It's just speculation, but that's what's so cool about No Man's Sky, is that it leaves it so open that you can interpret these things however you like. And here I'm just looking at the bubble grass, which is kind of odd to find in a cave, to be honest, especially on an airless planet. That's a cool detail. But that's pretty much all that planet had to offer. Still pretty cool, but not as cool as this planet. So this is the moon of Nisa 37. You can actually see the planet in the background there. I extended this shot because I just loved it so much. It's a beautiful moon. It's got these wonderful anomalous creatures. And, I mean, you can't really see it because of the washout, because of that HDR issue, but there's also a rainbow in the background. Simply stunning. So this is the moon of Tilenem, and this moon is also pretty spectacular. So, I'm actually starting this exploration in my starship, because the caverns here, the tunnels, are so large you can actually fly through them, which I will attempt to do here. Oh, whoops. So, I would only recommend this if you have a ship with pretty good shields, and I would not attempt this on survival or especially not permadeath mode, because you are liable to crash your ship. Luckily for me, I'm pretty good at what I do. I have a few years of experience, so I'm able to navigate this cave, and in the footage it looks even worse because the contrast is so low. But I promise I could see a little bit better when I did this. Now that being said, I'm still not immune from hitting the walls because, I can't see my whole ship. In VR, this would be a very interesting place to explore, I'm sure. So as you can see, not much to see in these large tunnels. They seem like they might be lava tubes, or perhaps they're the tunnels, the burrows of a large titan worm. Hard to say, but there isn't much plant life or anything going on in there. Now, were I a smarter man, I would have exited through that hole in the ceiling up there. But me being me, I just had to see how far down the rabbit hole goes. Or rather, the Titan wormhole in this case. And I just had to go back in. Now, unfortunately, not every cave has an exit. Sometimes it will lead you down a dead end. So, in that case, I was thoroughly stuck. I just decided to land and go it on foot. Very reasonable idea. It was either that or crash my ship. So, here I am at the back of a very long, very wide cave. And as you can see, like I said, not any stalactites, stalagmites, or what you would expect to see in a cave biome. Instead, it's very rocky. So that leads me to believe, maybe they were made relatively recently, geologically speaking. Or maybe they're prone to some sort of meteorological event. Now, one of my tips for exploring these is actually to use an exocraft, like the Pilgrim here. They're pretty much tailor-made for pilgrims and for any fast exocraft. And if you ever feel the inclination, there are also good places to build a base and to set up like a racetrack, which yes, you can actually set up racetracks in No Man's Sky. And they're perfect because not only are they really good at, letting people know which direction to go because they're pretty much all closed off, but they're also really good for performance because even on PS4, there's not much to render here. So it's a pretty great place for exocraft races and just for fun, right? Just to explore. Now, lucky for me, there do seem to be some regular caves around here, probably older, more natural caverns. And in here, we can see a lot of the more usual trappings of a underground biome. We have beautiful vines, stalactites, stalagmites, bioluminescence. But the color scheme here is really interesting because normally when we're looking at these types of things, we're looking at very consistent color distribution. So you're looking at, say, green, right? You'd have green tulips, green mushrooms, green moss, green rocks, green algae, all that stuff. But here we can see, sort of a red deposit on the rocks, the stalactites. We're seeing purple leaves. We're seeing, pink purple mushrooms. We're seeing yellow tulips. So the colors seem to be all over the place, which is something kind of unique for No Man's Sky, at least in my experience. Maybe I don't get out enough within the game. Or get in enough, right? Because they're caves. but I still find it really interesting just how varied the colors are in this cave. A little less, maybe, visually appealing, but a little more interesting at the same time. And the stalagmites in this cave are absolutely massive, I have to say. I mean, look at how tall they are. So here's an idea of what the cave looks like in its natural light, without my flashlight. It's not particularly well lit, but I like the lighting. It's very dark and sort of mysterious. Hopefully the HDR didn't mess it up too badly. So as we continue to explore this cave, it actually does reveal more of its secrets to us. So again, I've been exploring. I feel like I've seen most of what the cave has to offer, right? But then over here, I come across something that isn't found anywhere else in the cave. And that is this strange pool, this collection of liquid deep into this cave. Interesting. And as far as I know, this is the only one I've found on the planet. So here's a look at it in the light. Another look at some of those odd color choices. But it's time to move on to our next planet. So, again, excuse the blown out contrast, but this is the frozen world of Raya 21. I bet you thought I was kidding when I said chills at the beginning of this episode. So as you can see, this is a very cold planet. Luckily, you can escape some of that chilling weather in the caves below the surface. Of course, you also have to contend with the toxicity of these guys, but what's new. And you may also need to contend with the likes of this guy, who may have also fallen down the hole. Please look away, sensitive viewers. So, with that unpleasantness out of the way, let's explore the beauty of this natural masterpiece. The first thing that stands out are those vines. These clusters of vines have more leaves than I think I've ever seen on that type. And it gives it a very jungle-esque feeling, especially with the green coloration. But then we also have these strange rock formations that look like eggs of some sort, all across the floor of the cavern. And what looks to be even taller stalagmites than the last cave, which are very impressive. Must be a feature of this solar system. Or planetary system. Excuse my layman's terminology. It feels like a respite from the frozen tundra up above us. Now, I absolutely love caves like this because they feel like you've entered like a whole new world. It kind of reminds me of like something you'd see in like Journey to the Center of the Earth, right? Where there's like a whole nother ecosystem. Like I'm almost expecting to see dinosaurs down here. And what we do see is a little underground creature who looks like he's cleared out this part of the cave. Hello. Yeah, this one's definitely a keeper. And I am noticing now that those mushrooms are, a complementary color to the green grass and moss. So perhaps that is a more normal feature than I previously suspected. But as you can see, the lights and the grass and the accumulations on the rocks are all the same green color. So down here we have another submerged section of the cave. 2 for 1 this episode. That's pretty good. And this one, of course, is a different underwater biome than the last planet. We have some clams there, some cytophosphate, and what I can only describe as an abyssal horror. Now, normally, you can see me panicking here. Normally, I would know what to do, but it'd been a while since I ran into one of these. I I didn't remember which button to press, and I was playing with the HUD off. So I'm just kind of panicking, pressing a bunch of buttons. And I ended up having to pause and change that setting. But here I am, confronting it again with the knowledge of having to press square repeatedly. And with that newfound knowledge, I was able to easily conquer this foe. And collect its shiny eyeball. I just love how it's so obvious how different this ocean is from the last one. And here we can see some candle kelp, which, again, if you're not bringing oxygen protection with you, which I think mine ran out in this case, you can use that to replenish your oxygen supply, keep you underwater longer. But luckily for us, the cave opens up right here. Here we are. So keep in mind all of this, that underwater biome, this beautiful jungle we're in, this steamy environment, all these plants and unique species. This is all taking place underneath the surface of this icy world. So if you were to just land and scan a few plants and animals and then leave, you would never know any of this existed. And here's a quick illustration of that point. There's one little hole in the ground. You can see all of that is just hidden just below the surface. I wanted to share that perspective with you because I sometimes forget just how impressive the tech is that makes this universe come to life. Alright, so this is our final planet, and this is a very mountainous planet, Oseatr VIII. And because this is a very mountainous planet, and as you can see these are very big mountains, the caves themselves are going to be quite steep as well. So as you can see, it's a dusty planet, sandy. We have a lot of rocks in this cave, but I would still consider it something like a jungle biome, as far as cave biomes go. But again, very different from the last one. The stalagmites, in this case, are actually like hexagonal deposits, which again gives it a very different feeling. Here you can see just how big these caverns are as well. It's a very impressive cave system. And if you want to do a little ore mining, we have that down here as well. So these are pretty cool. These vines have 4-leaf clovers on them, so must be my lucky day, huh? Maybe not. Now, the clip you're about to see is going to make this appear premeditated, but I promise you, this animal was the instigator. I was simply a helpless victim forced to defend himself under the most dire of circumstances. See, he clearly attacked me first. I had no choice but to brandish my weapon. I know it looks like I'm leading him on and I could have exited the cave. But don't be fooled, he would have followed me. I had no choice. I didn't want to do this. But it wasn't up to me. Now, it may look like I'm fleeing the scene of a crime, but that is not true. As you can see, I have returned because I have nothing to hide. Yep, nothing to hide. Alright, let me show you just how deep this cave goes. So I'm starting here at what I would call the top. And I'm just gonna see how far down I can go. Hopefully without killing myself. Also, can I just say I love how these are pretty much like big slides? And that they actually have sliding in the game. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool, huh? And this is pretty much where I started. And there are deeper caves on this planet that I probably didn't find, but what are you gonna do, right? Alright, well that wraps up episode 5 of Spelunking in Space. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want me to continue this series. As I said, back by popular demand, but honestly not really. Wah. But I personally enjoy making these series. I find they're really fun to get footage for. they're interesting to do voiceover for because I don't have like a script or anything. I'm just kind of watching them with you and commenting on them based on my experiences. It's the kind of series I enjoy doing. I like bringing attention to some of the smaller features in No Man's Sky. But hey, if it's really boring, let me know, and I'll either stop them or make them more exciting somehow. Maybe I'll edit in more explosions or something. I don't know. I'm not that advanced of a video editor yet, so we'll see about that. But as always, I appreciate your support. Thanks for watching this video. Leave a like if you liked any of the caves in this video. Or if you didn't like any of the caves, do it just to be nice, because you're a nice person like that. If you're not a nice person, go ahead and leave a mean comment below. That's fine too. You know, to each their own. But thanks again. Subscribe if you're interested in seeing Spelunking in Space Episode 6. If this is your first time seeing this episode because you're new to the channel, go ahead and check out the playlist below. I just made a new playlist that just has Spelunking in space, so you can see those all in order. Let me know what you would like to see in the next episode. Any particular kind of caves? Any particular kind of exploration? Do you want me to go on some kind of killing spree? Well, too bad, because I'm not a maniac. But who knows, right? So, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!